Welcome to the BIP Ventures Extraordinary Pursuits podcast, a fascinating and inspiring journey into the world of venture capital and startups. Each episode offers masterclasses and entrepreneurial stories from some of the top minds in the innovation economy. Get ready to unlock new ideas and gain valuable advice for how to thrive as an innovator and an investor. On this episode of Extraordinary Pursuits, our Mike Vandiver talks with John Frazier, the CEO of InDinero, an accounting and financial services solution provider. InDinero specializes in relationship-driven, tailored support that helps growth-oriented companies navigate the complexities of financial management. John has more than 25 years of experience in the services space and a unique background that blends electrical and electronics engineering with cloud services. And that has helped him to deliver guidance through modern financial solutions. John shares why it's important to choose an outsourced CFO and accounting services partner carefully, especially for early stage companies. Getting access to expert financial resources is not only valuable, it is necessary. John also shares some of the ramifications of not getting outsourcing right and shares tips for how to make sure you do. Let's get started.
Hey, John, I appreciate you joining us today to talk about an important topic of kind of how to choose and what to think about in terms of a fractional CFO and accounting services. I look forward to the conversation.
I certainly appreciate the invite, Mike.
So we'll get started with just the high-level question and something that I think I see frequently now, and that is we've got a really early stage company, first-time founder maybe, the revenue's well less than $1 million. So what do you say to someone, or how do you talk to that audience when they really may not see the benefit of spending money on any what I'd call expert financial resource?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. And I get it. If you have limited resources, your revenues, less than $1 million, you got to make decisions about where you put your money for growing the business. The first thing I would think about if I was in that position is, okay, I'm at $1 million today. How do I get to $10 million tomorrow? And oh, by the way, do I really understand how I got to $1 million? Do I understand my financials? Do I have a basis to build from? And so my recommendations to somebody in that position would be to be thinking about, are they comfortable with where they're at? Do they understand the business well enough? Do they have financial models that help them, help them interpret what it's going to take to grow from 1 to 10? And if the answer is no, that's a perfect time to engage with an expert to come in and help you figure those things out before you actually start having tremendous amount of growth and have to rebuild the platform.
Okay, so really just the simple way I would phrase it is foundation building while you're not in this crazy growth stage and you're running around with your head cut off. You have a little bit of time to really put the right structure and foundation there.
It's always easier to do it when you're smaller, more nimble than it is once you build the second and third floor to the house, right?
Yeah. All right, we're done with that one. So we think about outsourcing the accounting operations or the CFO operations in high growth startups. What have you seen as kind of some of the best case outcomes from outsourcing these services?
Well, first I'll say, I believe that, the best outcome is to have a partnered relationship. And I say that because, outsourcing to me means I'm giving you the recipe, I'm giving you the expected result, and you're processing it for me, which is what a lot of, small CPA bookkeepers will do for an organization. To me, I think the best outcome is when you're partnering with that financial expert, working on them understanding your business. So the inputs that you get, the results you get, the outcomes are tailored to what you do, understanding your industry, understanding the company's, the life cycle, where you're at in your life cycle, your growth, And so the outcome is a tailored outcome. It's not we're providing the what I call the meat and potatoes, the table stakes of, getting books closed, getting things done accurately. It's actually having that plus enough insight to give advisory as to where to go next, how to get to that next stage, or how to do that next thing. To me, that's the best sort of outcome.
Okay. And from us, some of that, I think from my perspective and your perspective, since we live in this kind of on a daily basis, is somewhat check the box. So from a strategy perspective, maybe talk about importance from a fundraising perspective, from a higher level strategy perspective, and maybe outsourcing these services and how that plays into that.
Yeah, so certainly if you're an enterprise or an entrepreneur that knows where you want to be, it makes it a lot easier to build the plans and the roadmap to get there. Candidly, most founders don't know, right? They ultimately think they want to get to some sort of an exit. And so building a strong foundation, focusing on the things that will help you get to that transaction, get to an exit, are critical, because those activities, those transactions don't happen overnight. You have to have enough information, you have to have enough detail in order to support that transaction going through. And so focusing on building the basis, having the understanding, having the history of solid financial results along with the reporting simply puts that enterprise or that organization in a position to get through to the next stage much easier.
Yeah. I would agree. I think from a diligence perspective, having been on the buying and selling side, life's a lot easier when you can provide financials that are relied upon. You can answer questions about the business. You understand your own metrics. It really makes that process a lot easier for everyone, and gives you a lot higher probability of actually getting a transaction closed, whether it's selling the company or raising your first round.
Absolutely, Mike. And I've seen situations where, founders get into the process and all of a sudden their valuation, drops simply because they don't have that strong basis. Heaven forbid, sometimes the deals fall completely apart because the third party doesn't, want to take the risk without that insight. But more likely it's a founder that thinks they're going to get some multiple, some exit. And then all of a sudden they realize, based on the lack of that foundation, the lack of the insight, the history, from a reportability standpoint, they're getting something less than.
Yeah. And that's a good segue into kind of a follow-on question is, we talked about some of the best case outcomes for getting it right. What are some of the ramifications of not getting it right, of getting the decision wrong with regards to partnering with the wrong partner or not partnering at all and kind of rolling the dice?
Well, I think I alluded to it a little bit there before, Mike, and that is, by the time I know I want to do something, right? I'm a leader, I'm a founder, I want to get to an exit or I want to get to a transaction. It's a 12 to 18 month process to be in that position. So if you get it wrong, it's having to, redo it or do it at all if you did anything. And then taking the time to get the road behind you to where people truly do understand and believe the financial result or the financial reporting that you're providing.
Yeah. That's a good point. The only thing I would add on that, I think, and I have somewhat of a bias here, being a finance guy, is that you can't manage what you can't measure. And so just from a basic fundamental, I want to operate the business effectively. You want to talk about that for a little bit? Just kind of your thoughts there.
Absolutely. And I'll admit, I'm an operator. I'm not not a 0 to 1 guy. I'm a 1 to 10, 10 to 100, et cetera. And so for me, it's all about having good, solid visibility to the measures, the metrics that allow me to predictably run the business. Right. And it's really, really important for most organizations, especially as you grow and you step away from a level of day-to-day interaction as a leader, founder, CEO, whatever, to have a reliance on that data, on the metrics and the measures, and not only for helping guide the business, but helping make sure everybody within the business is clear as to the expected results and the outcomes that you're driving towards. So I'm a big believer in measuring, managing, and improving each and every day.
Yeah, no, the joke I had a lot of times with my team was, when you're the small company, it's like a speedboat. You can turn around and look behind you and see what the engine is doing. But when you get bigger, you're in a cruise ship, and the bridge needs to know what the engine room is doing. And if you don't have those metrics in place, you really don't know what's going on down there. And so
absolutely. I'm sorry, Mike. I was going to say, as a follow-up to that, it's, and it's a perfect analogy, because as you grow in size, when you do need to make decisions, you don't turn on a dime. And so when you're in that cruise ship, you've got to have that history to know where you've come from. But looking forward, you have to be able to make the changes that get you where you need to be. And it's not that easy. It takes time. You've got to adjust. You have to bring the organization along with you when you're in that position.
So John, a little more specificity around when to choose a provider. And so how does the founder or leadership team know, or what are indicators that it's time to bring in an outside financial expert?
Another great question, Mike, and not an easy one, because every organization is at a different stage in their life cycle. They all have different factors, driving where they're heading. But I'll say, a few of the key ones are, first and foremost, if you are in a high growth stage, knowing that, you don't have the time to spend, to invest, if I'm the founder, if I'm the leader of the organization, to really do to do justice in developing what needs to be developed. Another great opportunity is when someone departs the organization, right? It's great to bring in a third party, even if only on a temporary basis, to give insights that you might not otherwise have gotten. And it can be a transitionary sort of period to bridging to a new leader, or it can be, a permanent relationship where you're always seeking input from that different perspective.
All right. And I would imagine in the business that InDinero's in, you have clients where they just need, the founder or the team doesn't really know what good looks like. So they just need some structure to get built, and then they can maybe transition to their own team. What does that interplay look like for a lot of your clients?
Yeah, it's all over the board. We have, clients that, as you laid out, are looking for, support, insight in a more, project sort of basis, right? They just need to have the foundation set, and then they want to step in and take it on, all the way to, we have organizations that don't want to do any of that, meaning they want to partner for this part of the business, this financial operations segment of the business, as part of their strategy going forward. I've got a couple of good examples, case studies where, we had one individual talk about, he's a serial entrepreneur. He talked about, he spent, 4 or 5 years going through 3 or 4 different accounting partners before he found us, where he now feels comfortable. And during those 3 to 4 years, he was not able to, continue to develop his additional businesses, because he had to spend more time than he wanted focusing on the day-to-day. Now we're to the point where he says, every new company he goes and launches, he's going to go out with this partnered or outsourced accounting approach.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine that it doesn't have to be all or nothing, that you can maybe start with a fully outsourced, and you can kind of phase in pieces that you want to staff internally and have a mix of both. And so talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We serve clients that have grown into organizations of size and structure. And, a lot of them will take on, some of the functions and roles where we may continue to do the bookkeeping, the accounting piece, but maybe they put in a controller. And we have clients that do just the opposite. They keep the simpler activities like the bookkeeping, the accounting, and they bring us in for doing controllership and or CFO, delivering CFO services, simply because they understand that the higher that role within the organization, or the higher the impact of the role, it becomes more complicated, especially if you're in a growth oriented business, if you are adding new products and services, or there are change elements that are driving continuous change within that organization.
All right, thanks, John. So, building on the end of your last answer around some of the higher level finance work that companies often need, if you're a founder, what would you be thinking about, or what should they think about in terms of maximizing the value of an outsourced CFO? Like, what am I looking for? What should I expect from a work product perspective, maybe a cultural perspective? Just, there's multiple dynamics or variables there.
Yes, absolutely correct, Mike. And if I would just start with one thing, I would say I would be looking for a problem solver, somebody who can help actually pull the pieces. Maybe you call it a puzzle master, right? That can pull the pieces of the business together, understand enough to be able to help solve problems and move the business forward. To do that, you certainly need to have the basic financial know-how, right? So to me, that's a table stake. But what are the other elements that really help put that together? Having industry expertise, that certainly is going to help put the puzzle together in a more cohesive sort of way. I would also say, in these days, even in traditional businesses, having a tech savvy partner, CFO. There's nothing that happens in the finance space today. Nobody uses an abacus anymore. It's all done with technology, and typically in a standard financial operations organization, there's probably 10, 15 pieces of technology required to pull the picture together. So having a tech savvy partner, and then at the end of the day, it's having that person who fits within the organization. And it can be cultural or, whatever view you want to take, but it comes down to good communication skills, having somebody who can translate the financialese into businessese, for those who are not CPAs, and having somebody who's just good at communicating both the positive and candidly the negative. Because to me, that's the other difference between outsourcing something where you're going to get a result back without any of that color, or a partnered advisory service where I might come back and tell you, candidly, your baby's ugly, that something's wrong. I might challenge you on your assumptions and position in a respectful way, but based on my experience in that advisory function.
Yeah, thanks. So really, kind of what you're saying is a true partner, right? True business partner that can give you the bad news, whether you want to hear it or not, because you need to hear it, right?
I will break my neck shaking my head up and down, because to me, that's what this is all about. It's about building a partnership, which is different than just having an outsourced resource. And here's an example. I'll give you a scenario that speaks volumes to this. Is about 1.5 years ago, we had one of our clients ask us if it was okay if their controller came to their annual financial leadership team meeting. They paid for the controller to come out for 2.5 days to spend time with the leadership team, because that's how close we were to the business. They viewed us as the partner, not just as some outsourced vendor.
Yeah, I would say that's optimal from a partnership perspective. That's a great
Absolutely.
Story. Yeah. So the flip side of that, we talked about what someone to think about in terms of maximizing value, but what are some of the common pitfalls a company should be aware of when they're looking to engage a fractional CFO?
I would say making sure that expectations are aligned, because a lot of times, clients will come in and they want magic to happen, right? They're expecting something magical out of the connection. And that magic can only come by way of great communication. So I call this a participatory sport, right? That third party, that CFO can't come in if the principals are not engaging actively, if they're not opening up the kimono, sharing the details, being as transparent as possible. And so to me, that's really, the downfall is, or the pitfall would be expecting one thing, but at the end of the day, getting something else because of that lack of openness.
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've certainly seen examples of where the founders just have never really had a CFO and they're not quite sure what they're expecting. So that expectation setting is very important of who's going to deliver what, because if those aren't aligned, it's not going to be a good relationship. Yeah,
absolutely.
Moving a little away from start about CFOs, but a little ancillary question in a way. How do you see today the accounting professional shortage impacting the hiring decisions of companies? Because it's hard to find good people, right? So I'm sure that interplays in outsourcing, but I would like your views and opinions on the environment today.
Yeah, it's a real challenge. Let me be clear. Even for us, finding the talent that has a breadth of experience. We typically are looking for folks that, are good at communication, and, a lot of times, that's a difficult play within the accounting space, having folks that are open and actively, communicating with the clients they serve. You read a lot of the articles and a lot of the news stories today about the number of accounting professionals dipping coming out of college, right? That the numbers continue to decline. So it's a real problem. I think the benefit that we have, or maybe the advantage we have, is we're not trying to just fill one or two roles. And I think a lot of organizations, when you are typically smaller, your risk in the business is greatly increased if you have just one or two folks. In our world, not that we don't have turnover, we have, folks that leave as well, but, we're dealing with, almost 200 professionals globally, where our ability to recover and, have backup and redundancy in place is far greater than an organization who is, supporting 2, 3, or even 4 professionals in their financial operations space.
Yeah, that point you made is one that I see is the expanded knowledge base that a small company gets through outsourcing some of these functions, in terms of just pure gap knowledge or industry knowledge, or just the personnel have seen a lot of things in terms of dealing with a lot of companies. So they've seen a lot of problems and they can anticipate things in advance.
Absolutely. And when I speak to every new hire that comes on, that's something I echo very loudly. I tell them, it doesn't matter if you've experienced or encountered an issue. I can pretty much guarantee you across our 200, delivery professionals, that we've got somebody that has been in some industry, in some situation, that we've seen it. And it doesn't matter if it's a core accounting activity or if it's a tax question. We've got professionals that are international tax experts. We've got folks that are R&D tax experts. We've got accounting professionals from, various industries. So I encourage our team when they come on, I encourage them to solve problems on their own, but I also say, no, you've got a network of, 200 plus people you can reach out to get an answer quickly.
Yes. So putting it in terms of our founders' views or perspectives, me as a founder, I should be asking the firms that I'm talking to, what does your knowledge base look like? How many companies are you serving? How do I take advantage of that? Right. So I really understand what I'm getting for my money. Would that be fair to say?
Absolutely, Mike. And I, and I know a lot of people would go, well, I want somebody, I'm a crypto business, so I want somebody that knows crypto, they're expert in crypto. Well, that's great, but it's also good to be, partnered with somebody who has expertise in the ancillary space or the adjacent space, because there's a lot of bleed over, right? Especially when you're in a nascent industry, that there's change coming every month, or something new every month. It's really good to have, that broader set of resources that have seen it happen in, the tech space, that has seen it happen in the professional services space. Typically we're not solving for new problems. We're simply solving for new ways to address those problems.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So we talked about this a little bit earlier around mix of services in a way, but just a little more specificity. So, and I may be putting you in the spot here, but is it better to hire a transactional doer and outsource the high level, or vice versa?
And I know I sound like a broken record, because it really all depends on where you are as an organization and your needs. I'm going to say if I'm an organization and I do not have a solid grasp on my day-to-day transactional activities, I'm going to focus there first. Because you can put you can bring in, the broad view, the big picture sort of resources, and they can lay out plans. But if you have nobody, or you have no structure behind it to execute, it's kind of wasted energy, wasted resource. So to me, it's going to be making sure that, my day-to-day, that tactical is as rock solid as I can make it. And then I build upon that.
All right. So really making sure I have a strong foundation of just basic GAAP financials, maybe some simple metrics, and then I can evaluate kind of higher level financial expertise and how that plays into that.
Yeah, you will get so much more value out of that high level expertise, because you'll be able to translate and implement what you're getting back, versus trying to figure out how to build it from scratch.
Yeah. So we talked about this a little bit early on, but I want to drill in this a little bit further. So what should an entrepreneur look for from an outsourced financial partner? I mean, some of the key things that they should be hoping to get.
Well, I think, it's really going to be a matter of understanding what those expectations are. So, you definitely want somebody who's going to be able to come in and provide you good financial planning, provide you some strategy around those plans, able to build financial models, capable of putting in place, reporting for things like, budget versus actuals. So it's kind of the basics, right? I know it sounds simple, but to me, that would be the most prevalent expectation that I would have with a third party, is just knowing that they know the basics. From there, it start adding on. Do they know my industry? Do I have to teach them? The example I give, years ago, I had a client that was early in the e-commerce space, right? And I was working with a team that, I had to train the team that for that e-commerce client, what we do for 11 months out of the year, we do one way. But for that, Black Friday all the way through the end of Christmas, we treated them a completely different way, because that was the most important time of the year for them. So, having a partner that can get that knows the, cycles, the ebbs and the flows of not only your business, but perhaps even the broader industry in which you're operating, is something else that I think is certainly impactful. Having a partner that is going to think beyond today, think about areas of risk control, things that, would be impactful for an organization. And I go back to, moving from 1 to 10. What are the things that you're going to want to think about when you're at 10 or 10 to 100? And providing that insight, maybe not the actionable results, but at least insights as to what I should be thinking about as a leader of that organization.
All right. So just kind of summarizing that, plus what we talked about earlier, I kind of see a couple of themes. One is breadth of experience. Two would be someone who can anticipate, but also help you solve problems. And then an organization that can communicate in clear and plain language so you understand what's going on.
And you did a great job of doing exactly that, Mike, taking everything I said and presenting it in clear and simple language.
All right. Just want to make sure I got it right. So
you did.
So, you've got a lot of use cases. I'm interested if you can kind of give me a success story of a business that kind of greatly benefited from outsourcing their CFO functions at an early stage.
Yeah, and I'd love to be able to just knock out two or three that are really impactful. I mean, I think I would start by talking about the companies that we've engaged with that have really grown and developed, right? And while we may have had a part in their success, it may have been several years ago, but companies like DoorDash, GitHub, and the list goes on and on, were all companies that started as small organizations, small businesses that took advantage of what we had to offer 10 plus years ago. More recent results, or more recent examples of real results is, we actually had a client about 3 or 4 months ago that went out to raise some capital. They actually used our team, put our team in their pitch deck, listed our team as, their CFO, their financial operations team to successfully raise. To me, I think that's a great success. That shows that, we were able to participate in an outcome where in the outcome being the company was able to move the business forward by leveraging our team, our expertise, and the partnership.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing some good brand names there you called on that to give people confidence that at an early stage when you don't know what you don't know, taking advantage of these services can make a difference.
Yeah, the opportunities are limitless, honestly. And there's a lot of companies that we've seen grow. We have companies that have started, with us, in the maybe $1 million, $2 million, but have grown to be 10, 15, 20 million already. They may not be the $1 billion companies yet, but they're solid companies with solid growth.
All right. So John, you can ask me question. So
sure. And it's interesting because, we are talking, we've not physically met yet, right? We live in this virtual world, we're doing business together. So one of the things that I've been, pondering, iterating specifically, for the past 3-4 years, pre and post COVID is really, the impact that will be had on the businesses, the business community for the work from home generation. And what I mean by that, all those people that are coming into the work environment out of college over the past 3 years, what sort of impact is this, remote work from home going to have on their ability to grow, and then subsequently the impact on the businesses that they may, be the thinkers of?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question and obviously very timely. I've debated that with a lot of my fellow gray hair, old school CFO peers as we think about the current environment. And of course, every generation has their own challenges. Could be internet comes on and the access to data was a management challenge, right? There's all kinds of challenges, but I think where I am right now, it's the 3 areas I see that I think will be challenges for this this work from home generation when they've grown up is, I think, general management skills, because they've just not been around to see it directly. And so a lot of that from my career was learning through absorption, through experience and seeing what good looks like, right? And right now, we're not sure what good looks like in this environment, right? We're kind of in a transition. So I worry about that. I certainly worry about culture and identity. because a company culture is hard enough to build when you're all kind of in one place. But when you're highly distributed, how do you effectively build a culture and an identity? I think that's going to be a challenge for people. And then, the last one is fairly obvious because we're all experiencing it, but it's collaboration and communication. It's just a whole different ballgame to try and communicate when you're remote. There's no water cooler talk. There's no side conversations in the hallway. And there's a tremendous amount of value in those types of interactions. And how do you capture that energy when you're remote? So those are the three things that are top of mind for me that I worry about, that I know that this generation will solve, but I think it is going to be challenging.
Yeah, all great points, and candidly points that, I deal with my organization every day. I also think, in the entrepreneurial spirit, I think a lot of those folks are going to just have a challenge because they don't have the network. They haven't been out there engaging and building the community that it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. So I think they're going to be stunted in their growth. I think it's going to take longer for those folks to get to a level of success. What I might consider success, simply because of these challenges in front of them.
Yeah,
it will be solved, and hopefully it'll be solved, for the positive and long term for everyone, because there's a lot of benefits for the way we're operating today as well.
Yeah, there are a lot of benefits, I think, from a work-life balance perspective. And I think even in some ways from a productivity perspective, that people can have the flexibility and I'd call it mind relief of, I can take care of my personal stuff, right? And so it's not on my mind all the time, and so I can, when I'm focused, I'm focused, right? But your last point on network is I think is a very valid point.
Cool. Well, appreciate the insights, Mike.
Yeah. Thanks, John.
Thanks for listening to the BIP Ventures Extraordinary Pursuits podcast. Check the show notes on our blog for the resources we discussed. You can find Extraordinary Pursuits on your favorite audio platform. Be sure to subscribe to the BIP Ventures YouTube channel and connect with us on LinkedIn, X, and Instagram so you get all the stories, learnings, and ideas for ways to thrive in the innovation economy. And if you liked this episode, be generous. Share it.